AskReddit. Serious. Redditors who have died temporarily / nearly died. Did your life flash before your eyes? If not, what did happen?
This is the way.
My heart stopped when I was in the air for 34 seconds. Not really a life flash, but a very calming feeling of as I described it. What was I even worried about? Everything is going to be fine. When I had my car accident I had the exact same feeling. It was like I pierced the veil of reality for a second and my perspective was really clear that no matter what everything was so okay, and I hope death is as peaceful as that honestly. Not my own experience, but I witnessed this moment come over a patient of mine when I worked in assisted living. He was having a major heart attack and I was the care driver who discovered him and stayed with him while IMS came. He was yelling in pain, crying and telling me he couldn't leave his family, and then suddenly he just became calm. It was like a switch flipped and all the fear and sadness had left his eyes. He just looked at me and said, well, now I'll get to spend Christmas with my wife again. It was early deck. He coded 2 minutes later as EMS was rolling him down the hall to the ambulance. My friend has described in detail her near death experiences and what's on the other side, and she says it is, and more, a billion times more powerful, and that's what we really are. But we shrink our consciousness and adorn these human bodies to drink in all facets of experience so that we may know fully what we are.
This is the way.
I had an NDE in my 20s. Was totally unexpected. The last thing I expected was a Christian reality on the other side, but that's what I got. In my early 20s I considered myself a Western Buddhist with no formal religious identification besides humanism. Really? I died and experienced an NDE that was more important than anything in my waking life. The experience changed me, changed my personality. I'm still riding on the energy from my NDE 30+ years later. No tunnel and dead loved ones for me. Just a 3D space of the most perfect blue light. Not like blue here, but something more intense, but permeating and peaceful. I was floating in that space. I don't remember talking with others, but they were there. There was music, but it doesn't sound like the 12-tone music we are used to. It was like the perfect chord with infinite notes. Jesus was speaking to me, but I don't have his words. I can only recall it as feelings of utter contentment, awe, and purpose, and a few memories of life that percolated up, mostly of times I'd been loving to someone, and how it had helped them, sometimes really small things I'd done. Neither the time or the experience was really linear. It felt like it all happened at once, but took a long time to happen. Anyway, in the hospital, it was touch and go for almost an hour as they tried to stabilize me, and then 3 days in a coma. It felt like 3 years, and sometimes like 3 seconds. My takeaway: love is all that matters in this world. Love yourself, love your neighbor, even love your enemy, and seek the one that made you to plug into them more than what is obvious. Celebrate your creativity and productivity. Never give up. Don't worry about failure, just enjoy and keep on. We do not die.
This is the way.
That is so weird. I had this happen once to me, not dying, but the feeling of piercing reality. My young niece was in the hospital and pronounced dead at one point. Her chances of survival were slim. I was driving alone in my vehicle shortly after hearing the news. I started to cry out to God, even though I wasn't very religious. It was a heartfelt cry out that I didn't even know I was capable of. I started yelling, "Why God? Why?" After a couple minutes of this, I suddenly started to repeat, "She's going to be okay. She's going to be okay." It was like reality didn't matter at that point. I started even laughing as I had tears rolling down my face, and again a sense of peace I never felt before. At the time I didn't care what other drivers may have seen. It was dark out anyway. The next day my sister called me and told me that doctors can't explain it, but she's actually doing really well, and she had progressively recovered from there. Now she is 7 and in dance class and the funniest, sweetest little girl I know. Edit. Thank you for the silver. Definitely unexpected. Edit. Thank you for the second silver. People that share my experience seem to understand. Complete fear and hopelessness turned to peace that surpasses human understanding. Bonus. She was our flower girl a couple years ago. Niece. Edit. Thank you so much for the gold. I will be sure to pay it forward. It is the most surreal feeling. It sounds odd, But it's almost like you don't fully grasp what being a living conscious being is until you've had one of those moments where it's almost like for the first time you feel real and comprehend life or death in such a heavy infinite way that normal feelings like sadness or pain or worry just don't even exist. The only thing on your mind is this peaceful determination, if that makes any sense at all. Glad to know I'm not alone, and I'm so happy to hear your niece is doing so well. This is similar to what I felt during my heart attack. I never went into cardiac arrest, but as they were wheeling me into the cath lab I suddenly had this feeling of calm, like if this is it, that's okay, things are what they are and it's fine. The feeling is called morphine. You get it during a heart attack. I hope you are better now.
This is the way.
I was walking across the road with one of my friends and they crossed the road and I waited a few seconds and then crossed, but I was very short at the time and couldn't see the car coming. I remember seeing the car coming on the right hand side on me, and the next thing I remember is being hit from the right side and flying through the air and landing with a thud on the side of the road and then hearing the tire screech. Luckily the only injury I sustained was a compound fracture to both the bones in my right leg, meaning the bone snapped completely in half and came out of my leg, and as they snapped and came out of the skin it snapped the artery in the leg and all the nerves. I went into shock from the injury, so I couldn't feel any pain besides the burning from the hot road, Australian summer weather. I looked down at my leg and noticed the blood coming from my sock pouring all over the road and my leg bent in half and thought, well, it's broken all right. Then I just remember being surrounded by people and I called my mum, and since I was in shock I wasn't distressed or crying, and I called my mum and told her I was hit by a car and she didn't believe me because I was so calm. She thought I was kidding. I lost a lot of blood at this stage and had a seizure and passed out, but I didn't think it was serious and I kept trying to move and get up, only to be held down by bystanders. I remember this white ring in my vision, and it kept getting bigger and bigger, blocking my eyesight. It started from the edge of my sight closing in. Like everyone else seems to be saying, I don't remember any life flashing before my eyes. I just remember feeling extremely tired and losing vision. I felt so at peace and relaxed, like it was a dream. And I was ready to pass on, if you will, not caring about what my death would mean to my family and all my friends. Even though it was a severe situation, I've never felt so at peace and calm before in my life, and I honestly can't wait to die just to experience that feeling again.
This is the way.
No life flash. It felt just like falling asleep when you're exhausted. Same here. I was having a C-section and I started to bleed uncontrollably. I didn't even realize something was wrong. I was just getting really sleepy and wanted to sleep. Summers's secondary postpartum hemorrhage, a week after section. I just wanted to sleep. I was cold and felt yucky and just so sleepy. You know, this is starting to scare me. Sometimes I get really exhausted out of nowhere and I want to go to sleep, but I pop back up fast because it seems like I'm going to die if I continue sleep. Narcolepsy? Nah, we suspected that. I got all kinds of brain scans and checkups done. I have no idea how to even go about it. I've gotten diagnosed with everything from sleep paralysis to even being suspected of having mini strokes, but nothing is ever found. Even worse, the symptoms get more and more bizarre with age. It started with sleep paralysis and just got more bizarre.
This is the way.
I had a near-death experience. When I was about 5, I was drowning in a pool. I probably didn't have enough memories at that point for anything to flash before my eyes, and I was also very focused on trying to get my head above the water again. I remember looking up at the sky through the water, that the surface started to look geometric / like tessellations. Then I experienced some sort of depersonalization. I had a distinct feeling that I was outside of my body, and I watched what happened next, my mom saving me from a distance. This is similar to one of my NDEs. It's actually my first ever memory. I knew what was happening and who was doing it to me, and I knew my mom was gone and couldn't stop it. As he was doing it, I was ejected out of myself into a buzzing dark tunnel, and specks of light rapidly whizzing past me with geometrical shapes, and then nothing else. I remember the motion, and I was either too young to be thinking in any coherent language or I just wasn't thinking anything. For some reason though, he didn't murder me and was put in prison shortly after for what he did to me. His name was George, and he died a few years ago. Hopefully alone and in pain. But that's my first ever memory in this life. Being strangled to death at 1 year old, after being beat up, and a cigarette being put out on the back of my neck. I hope the rest of his existence was hell.
This is the way.
I suffocated during surgery due to a series of errors with the nitrous mask and monitors that had been removed and not immediately put back. As I was suffocating, I tried to signal. Realized I was under so much nitrous I couldn't move. My ears were ringing. I thought about my husband and if my daughter would be okay. Cursed the anesthesiologist because one of the nurses said I didn't look good and he said no one could move until he finished this part. I remember blacking out, then watching from a corner of the or while everyone was rushing to work on a pink blob. I could see everyone clearly, but one thing was a blob. Realized the blob was me and they were trying to resuscitate. I intentionally did not go anywhere because I wanted to be there when I was resuscitated so I could be alive again. I just existed in that corner watching the chaos. Then I woke up on the table, bruised but alive. Man, I really hope all you people are telling the truth. What an experience. The investigation by the hospital confirms this happened, which is good, because my memory is fuzzy from lack of oxygen and such. I just imagine this angry ghost floating in the corner, rolling her eyes, and tapping her foot, while the doctors figure their shit out.
This is the way.
Maybe a little late to the thread, but my dad flatlined with a failing heart. When they brought him back, the doctor asked where he had been. My dad said he was picking blueberries with his long deceased mother and his sister 1,000 miles away. That sister woke up in the middle of the night, woke her husband, and said something was wrong with her brother. She had been dreaming that she was picking blueberries with my dad and their mom. I get teary-eyed every time I tell that story. He died a few months later. Miss Yap, Dad. Last week I watched this interview with a neurologist who studied near-death experiences for decades, and at one point he mentioned exactly what happened to your dad. Apparently your father was not the only one who experienced this. One of the most amazing interviews I've watched.
This is the way.
I was a passenger in a car driving home from holiday to celebrate my high school graduation when the car swerved and the driver hit an embankment. The car flew into the air and bounced off the ground 3 times, and I was asleep when it happened. I should have at least been hospitalized, and when ambulances for the driver, police and passers-by stopped, everyone mentioned how it's a miracle that we were alive at all. But when it was happening, I didn't have time to open my eyes before I experienced a violent force I couldn't have imagined. Kinda felt like I was put in a metal box and shaken around, you know, which is what was happening, and my head was so weirdly clear. I just had this intense feeling of like, God no, the car is crashing. This is happening, and I didn't feel any pain. I got banged up significantly, and I had this unbelievably overwhelming feeling that I was not ready to die. I was going to get out of that car, that my life was not over, and it was like my soul just said, no. I'm not exactly religious, but I've always tried to form a relationship with at least my idea of God, and in those incredibly fast, confusing seconds, I'd care if it was my brain doing what humans' brain do when they freak out. But I really felt like I was talking to God when I thought, not today, thank you, I'm not ready. It was such a peaceful, intense presence, and I've never been the same since. I can't ever forget that feeling like I was not alone. And I really want to believe I'm right about that. Edit. Please wear your seatbelts. They save lives. One saved mine. What do we say to the god of death? Not today. I'm not ready. Thanks. I was more enthusiastic yesterday. I'll get around to folding you tomorrow. Wait. That's what I say to my laundry. NVM.
This is the way.
There was absolutely nothing. No light. No memories. Nothing. It was like it didn't exist for about an hour or so. I didn't experience the passing of time either, so the entire time I was dead seemed like an instant. It was sort of like teleporting into the future. Most heroin or opiate odds will feel like you're drifting off to a much needed sleep. That's what's so scary about them. This can actually be avoided by not doing heroin. Thanks for the tip.
This is the way.
I bled to death after a car accident. I went somewhere I can't say for sure if it was real or just a weird chemical trip in my brain, but the best way I can describe it was like being in a hallway made out of space. It was beautiful and incredibly peaceful. I saw flecks of memories passing by me, but I wasn't focused on them. Then a woman's voice that felt like it was everywhere told me I could wake up and suddenly I was alive again. I'm pretty sure before you die your brain activity suddenly spikes, which is probably why you got all those memories. There's a theory that when you die, dimethyltryptamine is produced in your pineal gland. It's the most psychedelic compound found and is produced naturally. This has been proven in rats, but obviously cannot be replicated in humans given the timing. When ingested you go to a different place, have conversations with beings and all that crazy shit. Dr. Rick Strassman conducted the first and only DMT study on it, and there's a documentary too. Fascinating stuff. Edit. Didn't realize I put naturally in nature.
This is the way.
I went to a retreat in Peru to take ayahuasca. There was a young gay guy in our group whose vision was his father ejaculating over him. So it's hardly a resolvence of things, but just a wild ride that your brain goes through. It always makes me laugh when people use a DMT trip to explain other dimensions as real things, because the beings they met on that trip. I was in level 1 of Super Mario 64 for mine. Sure, I got to the top and met the Bomb King. Totally a trip from my own brain and not some otherworld. I hallucinated Mario stuff to on Salvia. I was a young Goomba and we were terrified cause we knew Mario was coming to destroy us. So much for the deep revelations.
This is the way.
I nearly drowned in a swimming pool when I was 9 years old at a hotel when my family were on a holiday. I remembered it like it was yesterday. At that moment, my legs and arms locked up. My lungs felt like stone. And then I slipped out of consciousness for I'm not sure how long. I woke up to the lifeguard pumping my chest. During the time I was unconscious, I was floating. Probably because I was in water, in space filled with stars. I tried to swim over to one of the stars and found out they were fragments of my memories. Voices, noises, smell, faces, places, all jumbled together. But a big part of those fragments were my mom, my dad, and my 2 younger brothers and a cousin who was also my best friend. It wasn't like a memory or anything. To put it into words, it was more like a soup of everything I've ever seen, heard, tasted, smell, and feel all there. Then I woke up. I've never seen that vision again. But I still remember it clear as day. Edit. Wow. Never got 1k likes before. I guess I should elaborate on what the memory fragments looked like. It wasn't too complicated. As a 9-year-old there aren't that many places I've been to, so the places I associated the people I have a certain level of intimacy with is my home, my classroom, and my cousin's swimming pool at his place's backyard. We hung out a lot, you see. The faces I see were incredibly vivid, but the images were just exactly that. Not real memories, because I've never seen my family member all together yet. We haven't had our family photo taken in, which we did later on the trip. I really wish I could put into words what the images looked like. But I guess the best explanation remains the same. The soup of memories. Sounds like a damn good soup. This is really interesting. If you have seen the movie Interstellar, there's a part where he goes into a black hole and, like you said, swims around in his memories. It flashes back to when he was on Earth and he seen Earth. This sense was based off the common belief in Native American culture that time isn't a line, but rather almost like a pond. Moving from time to time isn't going back or forth but just moving around in the pond. Whether you believe it or not, it's a pretty interesting concept. This is why some people still believe time travel is possible. I guess the future only knows that one. Interesting. I nearly drowned as a kid too, and for me, it was more like drifting off to sleep when exhausted, as someone else here described. I didn't see or experience anything, just woke up when resuscitated.
This is the way.
I had my heart stopped at the hospital because my heart was going 150 BPM per hours. I even had a readout printed out of me flatlining. I had a heart condition and was on acid. My life did not flash before my eyes. It felt like a black cloud spreading through my body, the heart stopping injection. Which makes no sense. I should note I have over 4 years drug and alcohol free now. But when it was over, the doctor was walking out of the room, turned to me and said, "Better living through chemistry, huh? Crazy experience, would not recommend." Edit. Yes, the injection was adenosine. Sounds like you were in supraventricular tachycardia, SVT, and the shot you got was adenosine. We call it CTRL plus ALT plus DELETE for the heart.
This is the way.
I'm security guard, and couple years ago guy attacked me in the parking garage and stabbed me. When I was bleeding and losing consciousness, I didn't really saw memories, it was more like memory with better outcome. Sorry about my bad English, not my first language. It reminds me when a metal fell down in my head and getting electrocuted because of the metal. That was scary. It felt as if you were in a bed but didn't want to sleep, then sleeping instantly. Thanks guys.
But the Empire is gone.
Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed watching. It was really fun to make. Let me know your favorite parts in the comments. I'll see you in the next video. Keep watching Reddit King.